All right, get ready, folks, because we are diving into some really murky waters today.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to be taking a close look at this guy, Chris Butler,
Okay.
also known as Jagat Guru Siddhaswarupananda Paramahamsa.
Wow. That's a mouthful.
I know, right? It's a lot.
Yeah.
And his organization, the Science of Identity Foundation, usually called SIF,
All right.
and we've got a whole mix of sources for this one.
Lay it on me.
We've got some excerpts from SIF documents, some online forum discussions, even some news articles.
Interesting. A real mixed bag to get different perspectives.
Exactly. And the thing is, going through these sources, there's this real stark contrast that pops up right away
Between.
between the image that Butler projects, the persona,
Yeah.
and then the experiences that some former members describe.
Okay, I'm sensing some drama here.
Oh, there's definitely drama and some pretty serious accusations of cult-like behavior.
Oh, wow.
So we really need to carefully examine all this evidence and see what we can make of it.
Absolutely. We need to look at it with a critical eye.
Yeah. So maybe let's start with Butler's teachings.
Sure.
Because that's where things get really interesting.
How so?
So he makes this claim that he's on the same level as Jesus Christ.
Whoa, hold on. Really?
Yeah, he says that they're both pure devotees of Krishna.
Okay.
And that's really key because it positions him as the ultimate authority, at least in the eyes of his followers.
Yeah. I see how that could give him a lot of power.
Exactly. But then you see some of his behavior and it's wait a minute.
What do you mean?
He marries his disciple, Wailana,
Okay.
while still claiming the title Paramahamsa.
And that is...
It indicates renunciation.
So like a contradiction.
Exactly. And a former follower actually calls him out on this, saying it's a violation of traditional vows.
That's a bit shady, isn't it?
Right. It makes you question if he's really living by the principles he's preaching.
Makes sense, walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Yeah, and it gets even more complicated when we look at how he treats his disciples.
Oh, what's going on there?
So we've got these quotes from Butler where he uses incredibly harsh language.
Oh,
he even calls his followers a-holes.
For real, what for?
For things like not preparing food to his liking.
Wow.
Even though he, has numerous servants.
That's pretty harsh.
Yeah, it's more than just harsh language, though.
really?
There was this incident where he made a disciple wear a bag over his head.
A bag over his head. Why?
Because he didn't want to look at him.
That's messed up.
Yeah, and it's these examples that really raise concerns about the potential for power imbalances and psychological control within this group.
Yeah, that's some serious red flags there.
Totally, and you have to ask yourself, what kind of environment fosters that level of obedience, where followers would tolerate that kind of treatment?
Right. Where is the line?
Okay, so we're seeing this contrast between Butler's claims of divine status and his actions,
Yeah.
plus his treatment of followers.
Right.
And it's starting to make those accusations of cult-like behavior seem a lot less outlandish.
I'm starting to see it for sure.
Yeah, let's dig into those accusations a bit more because some of the things former members are describing are pretty wild.
Okay. Give me the details.
So we're hearing things like followers prostrating themselves before Butler, consuming his nail clippings, even eating sand that he walked on.
What? Eating sand? That's just strange.
Right. These are really serious allegations, and it points to a level of devotion that goes beyond what most people would consider, normal.
Definitely outside the realm of normal.
Yeah, and it's hard to wrap your head around it.
I can imagine.
But, Butler and his followers, including Tulsi Gabbard, they vehemently deny these claims.
Okay.
But the sheer number of people who are sharing these similar stories, it's hard to just ignore.
That's true. There's a pattern there.
Exactly. And it's important to acknowledge that there are these different perspectives.
For sure.
But the question we need to consider is, what would motivate so many former members to come forward with such specific and consistent accounts?
That's a great question. It's hard to dismiss that many people.
Right. And this brings us to another aspect of SIF that has generated a lot of controversy.
Okay, what's that?
Their involvement in politics, particularly in Hawaii.
I see.
They've been pretty active trying to influence legislation and get their members elected to office.
Interesting. So they're getting involved in the political sphere?
Yeah, and they even formed this political party called Independence for Godly Government,
Okay.
which eventually dissolved because of allegations of dirty campaign tactics.
Oh, wow.
And this all raises questions about, their motivations. Is it about genuine service to the community,
Right.
or is there like a hidden agenda?
Something else going on behind the scenes.
Exactly. And their political views tend to be pretty conservative, especially when it comes to LGBTQ plus rights.
Okay.
And Mike Gabbard, Tulsi's father, and a prominent SIF member, he has this long history of opposing such rights.
Really?
Yeah, he even founded a group called Stop Promoting Homosexuality America.
That's interesting.
And it just seems like this contradiction, right? A group that's focused on love and service to God,
Yeah.
but actively opposing the rights of a particular community.
That's a pretty big disconnect.
Yeah, and then there's the hypocrisy surrounding their stance on abortion.
Okay, what about it?
So they publicly oppose abortion, but they've been accused of accepting donations from pro-choice lobbyists.
That doesn't seem to add up.
It's all very contradictory, and it just makes you question their sincerity,
I see what you mean. It definitely raises some eyebrows.
So we've got these political activities,
Yeah.
coupled with the allegations of cult-like behavior,
Right.
and then the inconsistencies in Butler's teachings.
Yeah.
It paints this, really complex and concerning picture.
Definitely. And it's clear there's a lot more to unpack here.
Absolutely.
Let's keep digging.
All right, let's move on to another, really intriguing figure in this story.
Okay, who's that?
Joseph Bismark, also known as Japadas.
I don't think I've heard that name before.
So he was this prominent disciple of Butler, and he co-founded this company called QNet.
QMet.
Yeah, and that's a whole other can of worms.
Oh, how so?
So this is a multi-level marketing company that has faced accusations of being like a pyramid scheme.
Ah, I see.
And they've had legal troubles in numerous countries.
Really?
Yeah, we're talking investigations, arrests, even alleged suicides linked to financial losses.
Wow, that's really serious stuff.
It's mind-boggling, right? Here you have this prominent disciple of Butler
Right.
who's promoting himself as, this spiritual guide focused on love and service.
Yeah.
And he's deeply involved in a business model that has allegedly exploited countless people.
That doesn't seem to align at all.
It really raises questions about the ethical implications of Butler's teachings
I agree.
and the actions of his followers,
For sure. It's this interesting juxtaposition.
Yeah.
Like a disciple of a spiritual leader allegedly profiting from a scheme that preys on vulnerable individuals.
Right, there's definitely a disconnect there.
Big time.
Okay, and we can't talk about SIF without addressing, the elephant in the room,
What's that?
Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah, yes, of course.
She's this prominent figure in U.S. politics and a self-identified Hindu, and her upbringing in SIF definitely had an influence.
Right, she's been pretty open about that.
And her connection to SIF has been both a source of fascination
Yeah,
and controversy.
I can see that.
Some people believe that her political career has been shaped by the organization.
Interesting.
They point to her ties with Narendra Modi and her support for the Hindu nationalist Bharatiya Janata Party in India.
Those are some pretty strong connections.
Yeah, and let's not forget, all those controversies surrounding her stances on various issues,
Right.
Seemingly opposing abortion while accepting donations from Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, that raised a lot of questions.
It makes you wonder if her views actually align with SIF's more conservative leanings.
It's hard to say for sure, but it definitely adds another layer of complexity to her political career.
Okay, and before we move on, I want to touch on one more, alarming aspect.
What's that?
So, former SIF members describe this strict policy of ostracizing anyone who leaves the group or even associates with ex-members.
Wow, that's pretty intense.
It sounds incredibly controlling.
It does.
And former members even describe it as a form of totalitarian control
Wow.
where loyalty is paramount.
Yeah.
And questioning the group or its leader is met with swift and severe consequences.
That's a bit scary, to be honest.
One former member even compared it to North Korea's tactics.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty stark comparison.
Right. And if true, it's a really chilling thought.
No kidding.
So we've got these accusations of cult-like behavior,
Yeah.
contradictions between Butler's teachings and actions.
Right.
And then the murky world of SIF's political involvement. It's just a lot to process.
It is, but it's fascinating, isn't it?
It is fascinating.
There's so much going on beneath the surface.
Yeah, and we're just scratching the surface here.
Really. There's more.
Oh, yeah. In the next part of our deep dive, we're going to delve deeper into the financial ties of SIF.
Okay.
We'll examine the specific allegations of exploitation and abuse,
Got it.
and we'll explore the potential impact of all of this on Tulsi Gabbard's political career.
I can't wait.
This is just the beginning, folks.
Health up right.
Buckle up, because things are about to get even more intense.
I'm ready for it.
Okay, so we really need to dig deeper into the finances around SIF.
Oh, yeah, the money trail.
Because we keep hearing about this, like, lavish lifestyle that Chris Butler has.
Multiple mansions, private jets, the whole 9 yards.
Exactly. Multiple mansions, private jets, and it all begs the question.
Where'd all this money coming from?
Exactly. Where is it all coming from?
Right.
And it turns out,
Yeah.
if we follow the money,
Follow the money.
it often reveals a lot.
It usually does.
And remember Joseph Bismarck?
Oh, yeah, Butler's disciple, the one involved with QNet.
Yeah, the QNet guy.
Right.
Well, it turns out he was funneling money to Butler and SIF.
No surprise there.
And he even bought Butler a multi-million-dollar home in Lanikai.
Wow. Lanikai, that's like one of Hawaii's most exclusive neighborhoods.
Yeah, prime real estate.
Talk about a generous gift.
That's quite the gift.
Yeah.
So you have this guy who's allegedly running a pyramid scheme,
Right.
who is bankrolling Butler's extravagant lifestyle.
What a tangled web.
Yeah, and it definitely adds another layer to all the ethical questions surrounding SIF.
Absolutely. It makes you question everything.
And it's not just Bismarck.
Oh, there's more.
Another major financial contributor was Patrick Bowler, also known within SIF as Paramahamsa Das.
Okay, another big name.
So he was this wealthy businessman who donated generously to SIF for years,
Wow, really?
like buying properties, funding various projects.
I thought that he was really invested.
He was a big supporter.
Okay.
But wasn't Bowler eventually arrested?
Oh, yeah, I remember that. For drug trafficking, right?
Yeah, he was caught smuggling heroin into the United States.
That's a huge scandal.
It was a huge scandal, and it really shed light on some questionable sources of funding that were propping up Butler and SIF.
So we have a disciple allegedly running a pyramid scheme
Yeah.
and a major donor convicted of drug trafficking.
Right.
It's a pretty unsettling pattern, to say the least.
It's really unsettling.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, was Butler knowingly benefiting from these, like, unethical or even illegal activities
Right.
to maintain his lifestyle and to fund SIF's operations?
It's hard to believe he didn't know.
Right.
It's a lot of money flowing around.
Yeah, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about the allegations of exploitation and abuse within SIF.
Okay, let's get into that.
Because we've heard these stories from former members
Right.
about facing psychological pressure,
Yeah.
financial burdens,
Mm-hmm.
even physical harm.
And is there any evidence to back this up?
There is, unfortunately.
What kind of evidence?
We have documented cases of former members who say they were coerced into giving large sums of money to SIF. Some were pressured to sell their possessions
Right.
or take out loans to meet these demands.
That's awful to think people were potentially manipulated into financial ruin.
It's really disturbing,
It is.
and it goes beyond just financial pressure.
Okay, what else is there?
There are also accounts of verbal abuse, public humiliation,
Really?
and threats of ostracism for anyone who dared to question Butler's authority
Wow.
or wanted to leave the group.
It's just heartbreaking to think that people were subjected to that kind of treatment
Right.
in an environment that's supposed to be about spiritual growth and love.
Exactly. And what about the allegations of physical harm? Have those been substantiated?
There have been reports of physical altercations between SIF members,
Okay.
some allegedly instigated by Butler himself.
Wow.
It's hard to verify these accounts definitively,
Yeah.
but their existence is definitely cause for concern.
Right. It's really disturbing.
It is.
So we've got this charismatic leader,
Yeah.
these demands for absolute loyalty, isolation from the outside world, potential financial exploitation,
Mm,
and now even potential abuse.
yeah.
These are like classic signs of a cult-like environment.
You're hitting on a lot of the key elements that experts use to identify potentially harmful groups.
Right.
And while we can't definitively label SIF a cult without further investigation,
Yeah.
the evidence we've gathered so far definitely warrants serious concern.
Yeah. And remember Tulsi Gabbard?
Of course.
We talked about her connection to SIF, how it might have influenced her political career.
Right.
But now, seeing this darker side of the organization, it's time to ask,
What's that?
did she knowingly benefit from these potentially unethical or even illegal activities?
That's a tough question.
Did she turn a blind eye to the abuses alleged by former members?
That's a question she needs to answer.
Yeah, and she has consistently defended SIF,
Right.
denying any wrongdoing, claiming her spiritual practice has been positive.
I remember her saying that.
But as this evidence mounts, it becomes increasingly difficult to reconcile her defense with this disturbing reality that's emerging.
Yeah, she's in a tough spot.
It puts her in a challenging position, for sure.
It does.
Because if she continues to support Butler and SIF, despite these accusations,
Yeah.
it could really damage her reputation
I see that.
and alienate potential supporters.
Absolutely.
So it's this complex situation where political ramifications
Yeah.
are intersecting with ethical considerations.
Tricky situation for sure.
Yeah, and Gabbard has positioned herself as this progressive voice,
Right.
but her association with this potentially harmful group,
Hmm.
it raises questions about the authenticity of her values
Makes sense.
and the integrity of her leadership.
It's a tough spot to be in for sure.
It is.
Uh,
So this deep dive has really revealed a lot of unsettling information about SIF.
yeah.
From the finances
Right.
to the potential abuse to the political maneuvering.
It's a lot to unpack.
It's a lot.
It is.
And it raises some serious concerns about the nature of this organization
Absolutely.
and the impact it's had on its members.
You're right. But amidst all this darkness,
Yeah.
I think it's important to focus on the individual stories
Yeah.
of those who've been hurt by their involvement with SIF, their
Yeah.
experiences, their pain, their efforts to rebuild their lives.
Those are the things we need to keep in mind
Absolutely.
as we continue to unravel this complicated story.
That's right. Their voices deserve to be heard.
You're right.
This deep dive isn't just about exposing a potentially corrupt organization.
Yeah.
It's also about seeking justice and healing for those who've been harmed.
Exactly. And this brings us to this crucial point.
What's up?
The broader context of charismatic leadership
Okay.
and the dangers of blind faith.
Right.
We've seen this play out time and again, from religious cults to political movements.
Throughout history, for sure.
It's this fascinating question, right?
Yeah.
What is it about human nature that makes us so susceptible to these figures?
And their promises.
And their promises, yeah.
It's a combination of factors, I think.
Yeah.
People have this deep-seated need for belonging, a search for meaning and purpose.
Yeah.
Then you add in a desire for security and certainty
Yeah.
in a world that's often uncertain.
Right.
And it creates this fertile ground for charismatic figures
Okay.
who offer these simple solutions
Yeah.
and a vision of a better future.
Right.
But these leaders often exploit these vulnerabilities,
Yeah.
demanding unwavering loyalty and stifling any critical thinking.
And that brings us to the importance of critical thinking, right?
Absolutely.
It seems like so many people involved with SIF just shut down their doubts.
Yeah.
And blindly followed Butler's teachings without question.
Yeah, that's a key point. Critical thinking is crucial when evaluating any belief system or ideology,
Right.
especially those promoted by charismatic figures.
Yeah.
We need to be willing to ask tough questions, challenge assumptions,
Yeah.
seek out diverse perspectives.
And blind faith, on the other hand,
Right.
that can lead us down some dangerous paths.
Absolutely.
And blind us to potential harm.
For sure.
So we've got this tangled web of financial intrigue,
Yeah.
allegations of abuse, political maneuvering,
Right.
and the broader implications of charismatic leadership and blind faith.
It's a lot to unpack.
It's a lot to unpack.
It really is.
And it raises some fundamental questions about human nature and the choices we make.
It does, but within all of this darkness,
Yeah.
there's this glimmer of hope,
Okay.
the resilience of the human spirit,
Yeah.
the courage of those who speak out against injustice,
Right.
and the power of truth to set us free.
Those are really important things to remember.
They are.
And the final part of our deep dive,
Okay.
we're going to explore the lasting impact
Hmm.
that SIF has had on its former members.
Okay.
We'll examine the legal challenges that the organization is facing,
Right.
and we'll consider what broader lessons we can learn from this cautionary tale.
Well-
You know, we've uncovered some really disturbing stuff about Chris Butler and the Science of Identity Foundation.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff.
It really is. And I think now it's crucial for us to focus on the human cost of all of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, how do the people who leave SIF,
Right.
how do they cope with the aftermath?
It's a long and difficult process for many, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Former members often talk about these feelings of shame
Yeah.
and guilt for having been involved.
Right.
There's this huge challenge of reintegrating back into society
Yeah.
and struggling to come to terms with the manipulation they endured.
It's almost like they have to, deprogram themselves.
Yeah, kind of. Like, unlearn everything they were taught
Right.
and rediscover their own identity.
Yeah, it's a tough journey.
It is, and it extends beyond just the individual, too.
What do you mean?
They need to mend relationships with family and friends who were often pushed away during their time in SIF.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Some even describe this profound isolation, like losing their entire support system when they left.
And it's a testament to their strength that they're even able to rebuild their lives.
It really is. It speaks volumes about their resilience.
But this makes me wonder, like, why haven't there been more legal repercussions for Butler and SIF? Shouldn't they be held accountable for the harm they've caused?
It's a question that many former members and critics are asking for sure.
Yeah.
There have been investigations and legal challenges over the years.
Right.
But Butler and SIF have managed to kind of avoid serious consequences so far.
It's frustrating
It
to
is.
see these victims seeking justice, and it feels like the system is failing them.
Yeah, I understand that feeling.
So what makes it so difficult to hold these groups accountable?
Well, they're very careful, you know?
Right.
They operate in secrecy,
Yeah.
and they use these legal loopholes to shield themselves from scrutiny.
It's like they know how to work the system.
They do, and the legal system itself is often ill-equipped to deal with the nuances of psychological manipulation and spiritual abuse.
I see, so it makes it difficult to build strong cases.
Exactly.
It sounds like a perfect storm for these groups to just operate under the radar.
Unfortunately, that's often the case.
So what can be done? How do we protect people from falling prey to groups like SIF
Right.
and ensure that those responsible are brought to justice?
There's no easy answer, but I think it starts with awareness.
Okay.
We need to educate people about the red flags
Yeah.
of these potentially harmful groups.
Right.
And by fostering critical thinking skills,
Yeah.
individuals are less susceptible to manipulation.
That makes sense, but what about those who are already trapped in these situations? Like, how do we help them find the support they need?
There are organizations like cult awareness groups
Yeah.
and support networks for former members,
Yeah.
and they play a crucial role.
How so?
They provide resources,
Yeah.
counseling, and a community for those who've been affected.
That's great.
And it's important to remember that leaving a group like SIF can be dangerous.
Oh, why is that?
They may use intimidation to prevent members from leaving.
Wow. So it's a really delicate situation
It is.
that requires a lot of sensitivity and understanding.
Absolutely.
We've examined a lot of information about SIF,
We have.
but it's important to acknowledge that this story is still unfolding.
Very true.
So what are your final thoughts?
Yeah, the legal battles, the investigations, the personal stories, it's all ongoing.
Yeah.
The full truth has yet to be revealed, you know?
Right.
But I think we can draw some key lessons from what we've learned.
Like what?
We need to be vigilant
Okay.
about the dangers of charismatic leadership
Yeah.
and the potential for abuse within any group, whether it's religious, political, or social.
Right. It's about being aware and informed.
Exactly. We also need to prioritize critical thinking.
Yeah.
Encourage people to question authority, especially when it comes to belief systems and ideologies.
That's so important.
Yes.
And most importantly,
Yeah.
we need to support those who have been harmed by these groups, offering them compassion and the resources they need to heal.
Couldn't agree more.
Well said. This has been a heavy but crucial deep dive,
It has.
and it's really exposed a world that many of us were unaware of.
Yeah, a hidden world.
Yeah, and it leaves us with this sense of responsibility
Right.
to speak out against injustice
Absolutely.
and to protect the vulnerable.
That's the heart of it, shining a light on these dark corners,
Yeah.
amplifying the voices of those who've been silenced.
It's powerful.
It is, and ultimately it's about encouraging everyone to become more informed,
Yeah.
more discerning, and more compassionate.
That's a great message to end on.
I think so.
Thank you for joining us on this journey,
It's been a pleasure.
and we encourage you to continue exploring this topic, seek diverse perspectives, and form your own conclusions.
That's right. Keep learning.
And remember, if you or someone you know has been affected by a potentially harmful group,
Yeah,
there are resources available. Don't hesitate to reach out. You are not alone.
you're not alone.